And Apple has announced the new iPhone SE, breathing life into the 4-inch smaller iPhone market. So before you buy it, there are 20 things I want you guys to know. Some bad, some good, and some facts that might certainly come in handy when purchasing this device or even considering it. And there's certainly a lot that Apple hasn't shared with us in the event. So this video, my purpose was to fill you in on all that information. So first off, no 3D touch. The flagship killer feature of the iPhone 6s will not be making its way over to the iPhone SE. And you'll notice in the duration of this video, all of the corners that Apple's been cutting in order to keep the price on this thing low. So it's been confirmed, Apple has officially said this thing is titled Special Edition. Funny they didn't mention it in their actual event. There really isn't much that's changed on the shell. We expected a full redesign, but at least Apple got rid of the FCC labels. You'll notice it looks a lot cleaner now without those things just jutting out. Instead of the silver screen print that's easily scratchable on the 5S, Apple has went and created a milled Apple logo on the new SE. Just like in the newer 6 and 6S models, this thing is machined from a single piece of aluminium. The display is still the same 5S display. It offers worse viewing angles and a lower contrast ratio at 800:1 versus 1400:1 on the 6S. Really disappointing here. The LTE chip is not as good as the 6S here. It's only capable of up to 150 megabits download speed versus 300, and it only has 15 LTE bands, making the 6S the better international phone. Still, 15 is better than most Android phones nowadays. Although this thing does have 802.11 AC Wi-Fi, there's no MIMO support, meaning it doesn't get as good of range as the 6S, and the theoretical download speed is lower as long as your router supports that. I was a bit disappointed with this one. The fingerprint sensor is using last generation technology. This is currently being used in the iPhone 6, so second generation Touch ID didn't make its way to the SE, meaning it will be slower, it will be less accurate, as can be seen here. The front-facing camera remains at a paltry 1.2 megapixels with an f-stop of 2.4, meaning this thing is really going to do poor in low light conditions. A bit disappointed here. And there is no barometer, so this is the one sensor that's missing that the 6S and other phones do have. This thing basically is responsible for altitude and sensing the change in atmospheric pressure, so a lot of health applications use that. And surprisingly, Apple didn't cheap out on the internals when it comes to power. 2 gigabytes of RAM has been confirmed as by these leaked benchmarks from Antutu and Geekbench as well, and even another one. So 2 gigabytes of RAM for sure. That A9 chip is just icing on the cake. Another surprising one is the 6S camera sensor, 12 megapixels in its entirety, has made its way over to the SE. Not only that, it's been made better by being completely flush. This is probably one of the most even Apple designs ever, and it's awesome that it's still flush. And one of my favorite iPhone 6S features has made its way over front-facing True Tone Flash. A 1642 milliamp battery in the iPhone SE is larger than the 5S battery. As a result of the new, more efficient internals, better battery, this thing really has some impressive battery life, better than the 5S and even the 6S. So if you are a battery fanatic, this thing is the place to be. And here's where we start to see Apple cutting corners. This thing does not get the new aluminium 7000 series used in the 6S and Apple Watch, nor the dual ion exchange glass, so it's using last generation durability and materials. One of the smaller noticeable physical differences, the chamfered edges are now a matte texture. This is in an attempt to make it more scratch resistant. My 5S ones are all scratched as a result of the polish finish. If you're upgrading from a 5 or 5S, all of your cases will still be compatible. In fact, this thing is to a T the exact same measurements as the 5S. It's using the same shell. In the case that you were part of the iPhone upgrade program and wanted to go from a 6S to this thing is not part of that program, so you will not be able to do that. Instead, you can trade up towards it and pay installments after, but no upgrade program. It's interesting that this thing is the cheapest in the USA, not in developing markets at what it's aimed towards. This thing will come with iOS 9.3 as its very first firmware, so night shift, all those great new features will be compatible. Now I say this in the best way possible. This thing is old yet new. It's got the 6S internals stuffed inside of it. The most important things we care about, such as power, battery life, and camera, all share the exact same thing as the 6S, and that's what matters. All those little things I discussed, it will matter more and less to different people, but the three basics are there, and that's what makes this thing such a great device at a $399 starting price point. So if you guys are in the market for a new phone, a new smaller phone, this is the phone you want to buy. And I'll have a full review, comparison, everything on it just as soon as it's out in a few days here. I do hope with this video you learned a thing or two you didn't already know about the iPhone SE. Stay tuned for those new videos. Peace.